WLLCITY. That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. A bit cheerier than last week, I suspect. And I'm joined by Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, pretty good. A good result on the weekend, and seems like it was just enough to dissipate all of the doom and gloom that descended very quickly after a couple of disappointing. Well, I don't even know if it's a couple. Personally, I think only really the cup game is probably the disappointing result. I think like the other one is fairly par for like sort of where we're at. Like they're a top team and they pipped us at the post. I don't really think that's too much to be disappointed about overall. But anyhow, game on the weekend, much better.
Much better, yeah. It was a really interesting one. Obviously, first home game of the season. Was it 20,000 just about on the dot in the stadium? Lower bowl pretty much filled up. So there was a lot of anticipation, talk about the fact that we needed a positive performance, not necessarily just to quell any fears or anything like that, but just, full house just about. You want to encourage all the supporters to come back for the next home game. And, Tufan clearly took it upon himself to make sure of it.
I think the other thing is like last season particularly, or probably over the last couple, we haven't really made what is now the MKM or the KCOM when it was, but like a fortress where, we picked up as many points at home as we could. We seemed to be, even I think last year it was almost the opposite. We couldn't grab a win at home, but we were picking up points on the road. So it's good to make, if we can turn MKM into a bit of a fortress where we're, hard to beat. We play good football. We pick up points there. Then I think that's, that'll be a good thing.
It's going to be really interesting because I feel like under Grant, we seem to excel much more in that counter-attacking role when teams had more of the ball than us and we could launch a counter-attack and score a lot of goals. I think it must have been the season we went down where we had easily the league most sort of counter-attack goals. Whereas now it feels almost the opposite, where when you get a side like Sheff Wednesday sitting back and letting us have all of the ball, you see such a dominant display as that, where we can press them in the final third and really make the most of opportunities that way. Whereas against Norwich, that would seem to be more of a struggle when we were out of possession and not able to control the tempo. So it's going to be an interesting one to see what we do when we play against, your Swanseas, your Southamptons, sides like that who will likely have the ball more than us. But at least for this one, a really positive display against a side, essentially there for the taking, but you've still got to do a job and put them away.
Yeah, I think probably not the strongest team we're going to play this season, but as you say, you can only play what's in front of you, and I think we did that fairly well at the 2 goals. We switched off for 10 seconds in the game pretty much and copped 2 goals from those 10 seconds. I think just as like on the possession thing, and I think the better we get at maintaining possession, even against those top sides, like we struggled to hold possession and they were pretty good and they put us under pressure. So I think that contributed to it. But as we get better at maintaining that possession, then even against those top sides, that should start to balance out a little bit. So we're not so much, 70-30, against us. We can turn it into a bit of a 50-50 in terms of possession, and it becomes a bit more even. But at the moment, especially against Norwich, like when they pressed us, we sort of struggled to keep possession. And that's an area where we obviously all recognize we still need to there's room for improvement in that, maintaining possession when we are under pressure. But I think, the game against Sheff Wednesday there was lots and lots of positives out of that game. There was goals. There was great, passing movements. We were passing it, however people want to do the distinction, out from the back instead of around the back, or, but I think we seem to have, and I think it was because of the space that Sheff Wednesday allowed us, but we had, we were more decisive with that play. So we got the ball and we were moving it quickly because we had options available. Whereas obviously, a team like Norwich, and as you say, mentioned some of the other teams who are going to give us a bit more of a challenge that season, they're going to put us under more pressure, limit those opportunities, and we need to, we are going to have to figure out ways to work around that. But
yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, let's talk about some of the players in particular and the game itself. Then we had Kilo and McLaughlin come into the side for Vinagre and Vaughan with Greaves. It's an interesting one. I'd say Greaves shifted across to left back, but I'd want to get your opinion on it. It almost felt like we were playing with three at the back because Coyle was playing so high up the pitch that it felt like it was basically just three at the back.
Yeah, I did notice that. And I think it might have been a little bit of some sneakiness from Rosie because I think, we lined up and everything indicated it was a 4-4, like a 4-4-2 or whatever. But you're right. Like we had a designated winger in Lakilo on the left-hand side. Coyle pushed and sat very, very high in line with the midfield for 90% of the game, basically, and acted as like a wing-back or a winger on that side. Traore pushed inside into the middle to make it three in the middle, really. So we kind of did really play with a 3-5-2. So
it was almost like a 3-5-2 where Greaves was still basically the left back because it meant then that Lakilo didn't have to track back, but it's almost like a lopsided formation.
It was an interesting one because I noticed how high Coyle was and but Greaves was still sort of operating in that left-hand channel, and I was like, wow, Coyle's getting really high. He had so much ball, and I thought it was one of his best games I've seen him play, I think, in a long time. And yeah, I was like, man, he's leaving a lot of space in behind, but I'm not sure what it was. Maybe just the extra man with Traore pushing in, the extra man in midfield meant that that Wednesday couldn't really, capitalize on that space or what, but it seemed to work, and we seemed to handle that that pretty well. I think the only thing, I thought Lakilo had I don't know. I thought he had a good game. I didn't think he wasn't outstanding, but there was some really nice positives in that. He got the ball and he tried to take his man on a few times. He wasn't necessarily. I don't think he wasn't sloppy with possession. I thought he tried to take it on. If it wasn't working, he tried to come back, tried to find a pass. Where we've had plenty of wingers who, just can't get either. They can't take a player on, and they can't hold possession. They can't do anything. So I thought he was pretty good in that. I think the only real negative on his performance was with that free kick, which then resulted in the goal, was he didn't drop in and track that.
I was going to ask about that goal though,
but it was very strange because
we're always told we're always told to play to the whistle, and the ref blows the whistle so the players stop, and they then score as a result of it. I feel like it was a very frustrating situation, and Rosie sort of spoke about it in the aftermath, and I get his frustration because it's sort of 2 in 2 games of refereeing decisions kind of impacting us on the score sheet, and I can imagine that when we went 1-0 down, the pressure he would have felt and the frustration because of the way that we've been dominating the game, to have that as the manner of the goal. Look, I mean, like he's critical of the players for not tracking back and getting the shape right, but it was such a weird one.
Yeah, it was. It's certainly strange, but I think the positive is the response. I think we carried on. We didn't drop our heads. We kept doing what we're doing. Owned the pen, which I think was well deserved. We worked hard. We'd worked really hard. We'd created a few really good opportunities and just hadn't quite been able to put them away. But sort of from that moment on, it sort of almost was never really in doubt. Tufan just sort of grabbed the game by the scruff of the neck then.
Yeah, and to be fair as well, it's not as if it was just Tufan. There were players, and that's why. And we were saying the endeavor from the whole team from the start of the game was so good. 8 minutes into the game, Slater nicks the ball off. Is it Bannon? I think forces a really good save. That twist and play from Delap, where I think he hammers it into the post. I think we were 1-0 down at that point in the game, but Delap probably didn't have as good a game as the Norwich game, but I still thought he had flashes where he looked really positive, and that was probably the biggest one for him. But yeah, I thought it was a really progressive, attacking, positive display from the whole team. Even as you say, when we went 1-0 down against Doncaster and we conceded, we kind of folded a bit. But in this game, we went 1-0 down and we just kept pushing and got our, reward, I suppose, for that endeavour with the goal just before halftime.
I think the thing with Delap, potentially why he seemed better against Norwich, was they were obviously pressing us. They were much higher up the pitch, which had much more space for him to get in behind. So it might be one that we need, or not we, but Rosie thinks about in the future, is like how teams are playing, how they expect to set up against us, because it might be one where, Oscar might have been the better choice to start against Wednesday, who are going to sit deeper and going to be on the edge of their box a bit more, where a poacher might have been a better sort of an option there, just because of, there wasn't going to be lots of spacing behind to exploit. So, but I think, because he came on and I think we talked about the high press, and his bit of pressure, resulted in Connolly getting possibly the easiest goal that he'll ever probably score. But
what's the keeper doing there? Like, what's he like? He's come across to get the pass, but like, I mean, it's sort of, is it the defender who's not looking? It's a I don't know why you blind pass in that situation to begin with, but also keeper didn't really help himself.
I'm not sure exactly where that pass was meant to go, whether it was supposed to go to the keeper or to the centre back, but wherever it was supposed to go, it didn't go there. And you just go, that's the perfect press, though. You've got one bloke putting pressure on the ball carrier, and the other striker has shifted in to cut off those passing lanes, and picked it up. Yes, the keeper got himself wildly out of position. I agree. I don't know what he was doing, but I'm not complaining also, and I'm sure Connolly's not complaining either.
And of course, Tufan's second goal was a pretty good recreation of Mo Diami's winner at Wembley. Great run from Slater. I mean, he had a couple of those runs, and as he did against Norwich, and we sort of flagged the fact that I think he's going to earn a couple of penalties this season with that sort of fleet-footed movement into the box. On this occasion, Sheff Wednesday just sort of back off. He passes the ball into Tufan and he just slots it top bins. It would have been awesome to be sitting in the stands behind. There go my dogs. It would have been awesome to be sitting in the stands behind that goal to watch it curl in, because it's that perfect curl into the top corner. A goal fitting to win any game. Yeah,
it was a sensational finish, and he's shown glimpses of that, I think, last year, where he sort of get the ball on the edge of the box and he just couldn't quite get his range right, but or last season rather, but he just got it, had a little touch, looked up, and just, I don't know how he faces across the field and can pivot and swivel and hit it so sweetly that it just, is traveling outside the post and then curls its way just inside. It was, I think they called it as, an early possibility for a goal of the season.
Oh, for sure.
So it was, real good. I think, lots of players really stood up in this game, and it was really positive performances from individuals and from the team as a whole. So I think the weird mood that was around some of the supporters from those first couple of games, I think this has quelled it a little bit. We can score goals. We put in a strong performance at home in front of the home fans. I don't really know what else you got to do. So I think I'm looking forward to the next couple of games.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you think, as a final comment on the game, what you think this does for Rossini, because I know towards the end of last season, there's a lot of draws, pre-season similar, and then the losses to start the season. People were getting a little bit restless and sort of thinking, where's this going? Where are we seeing this improvement in displays? We get this great win over Sheff Wednesday. We'll talk in a second about the Blackburn game, which I think will be a really big chance to capitalise on this momentum. But surely this, as you said there, surely this starts to bring back some of that positive feeling around the club.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think, for me, you go, it doesn't really matter who you're up against. A good performance, a good strong win like that you just take it. You say that's a good win. That's good. We can build confidence, build some performance, momentum out of that. Obviously, there's going to be a bunch of naysayers who are going to say, "Oh, well, this is a team who's going straight back down to League One, so this doesn't really mean anything." But look, I think probably for Rosie, I think probably realistically, it's just a little bit of vindication for himself, just to say, what we've been doing, we can produce it, in the league, in the games that matter. So he's been working away. He knows what he wants to get out of them. He knows they're all capable of doing it, but it's been, I guess, inconsistent, and it still probably is, and it might be for a little while, but, maybe not. Hopefully this is the end of the inconsistent patch.
Absolutely. Well, look, we'll move on and talk about off-field news in a second, but first of all, I will grab your votes for the game.
Okay, so the 3 points is probably going to be pretty easy to guess. However you want to justify it, but I'll go a point for every goal that he scored. So Tufan can have the 3 points. I thought I just think about when we signed him and what they, was it Watford? I can't remember. Yeah, Watford players or whatever. So, he's lazy and he's fat and he's raw and he doesn't do like this and he's no good. And he just seems to be, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just he's content and he's happy with where he's at and what's going on now. But he really just seems to ooze class for us at the moment. I thought he had a really good preseason and just a sensational game against Sheff Wednesday. And I thought he was good against Norwich as well. So he just oozes class. So 3 points for Tufan. I'm going to go 2 points to Coyle, who I thought, as I think I mentioned earlier, had one of his best games in the City shirt, was bombing up and down that wing, whipped in a few really good crosses, involved in a lot. And 1 point I'm going to Jones, who I thought had a really good game, stepped in a couple of vital interceptions, not necessarily vital, but good interceptions like on the halfway line that broke down, Wednesday's attempt at starting attacks. I thought just controlled the back line pretty well, controlled the ball, was good distributing out. So I'm going to go a point for Jones.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, I can't argue with Tufan for the 3 votes. He absolutely ran the show. I went 2 votes for Slater, who I thought was really clearly up for it against his youth team at Sheff United's main rivals. Was clearly on it from the first minute to the last and put in a really good display. And then I went Greaves for the 1 vote. I thought in that sort of hybrid centre-back, left-back role, he got absolutely hammered a couple of times during the game, drew blood for that penalty as well, and put in a really commanding performance. So, look, and there's so many other players that we haven't even mentioned, like Traore, I thought was, awesome in midfield and got the assist for that 3rd goal. I thought Seri was comfortable on the ball as always and put in a brilliant shift. As we said, Connolly coming off the bench, getting in the right place, right time for that bit of pressing with Oscar. My dogs certainly seem to agree. But we'll move on. We'll talk a bit of off-field news that's certainly broken over the last few days, which was pretty exciting with some transfer news coming in. We've got the news that Twine might be signing or is signing on loan from Burnley, which is one that we sort of pursued last summer. He chose Burnley over us, and then there was sort of talk during the season of whether we'd be trying to get him back in on loan. Had seen some rumours that basically after we played them in the league last season, there was a bit of an agreement that we came to then. But it looks like it's finally happening this week, and we'll see what happens with that one. But what do you think about Twine coming into the club?
I think that could be a really nice signing. I think he'll potentially really complement, slotting into the midfield. Just somewhat like I think with like Woods is on the outer, Doherty's injured. I'm not sure for how long and when he returns, what really is his role. So I think, I think Twine could be a really good signing in to help and, a bit of depth and quality, I think, as well in that in the midfield. And a young player who's got lots of promise. So, I mean, I'll be pretty happy when if that gets announced, confirmed.
Yeah, and then And then, other players that we've been linked to as well, Raksaki from Palace, who I thought was pretty much nailed on to be going to Leicester and still well could be. I think he's also linked to Ipswich. Club seems pretty positive that they can get a deal over the line. And look, I mean, not to draw the comparison to Ebioe, but we were sort of seeing a similar position where we thought he was more likely to go to a QPR or someone like that. And he did end up choosing us. So, we should back the club in terms of getting deals done that they end up being quite confident in. There's another unnamed winger as well, supposedly bringing in on a permanent deal, who the club's being very secretive about because they're worried about alerting rivals to this player's availability, which, it's a nice old-fashioned transfer. Perhaps it will break when we actually see a player lifting the shirt, which would be a bit of a novelty this day and age.
Yeah, look, I think the Raksaki from Crystal Palace, I think like that loan with Ebioe might, work in our favour. He came in, he played games, he got minutes at the end of last season. And obviously, that's what Crystal Palace is going to want out of their loans, to know that they're going to send their player out and he's going to get minutes and get to play, first team at a decent level. And I think he's certainly got that option if he comes here, because I know also that it looks like Longman is looking at some offers. I think he turned down Turkey, but I'm sure there'll be some others that'll be chasing him. But it doesn't really seem like he's in the fold for the first team at the moment, based on obviously getting the tap on the shoulder to say, go and find somewhere where you can get some football this season. But certainly an unnamed mystery winger. It certainly makes talking about them difficult, but I mean, it is exciting. I mean, I like the suspense. I like the intrigue. The fact that they're leaving them unnamed kind of makes me think like, I guess it's potentially my imagination running away, but you go, well, they must be like someone who's got a bit of like, profile to them that if people realize we were chasing, that they, they might jump on the bandwagon or whatever. So I'm not really sure exactly what that is. It sounds like surely it's another one of these, Ajuns, contacts, but who knows? I'm excited to see what happens with that one anyway. See where that goes.
I'm just curious to see how it is more than anything. I think it'll be interesting. We've got some comments in the chat suggesting Robbie McCrory potentially as a keeper that we should be looking at. He played last season for Rangers and was very solid. He's being chased by United, but probably doesn't want to go there as a backup. Could be an interesting option. I don't know a whole lot about him, but I know that we are supposedly getting pretty close to signing a keeper as well, which I think is going a bit under the radar given the other business up the front end of the pitch. But, certainly someone to challenge Ingram, to provide probably a bit more of a backup than Lototala, or potentially to start, will be interesting. I mean, we talked last week about poor old Matt Ingram. I mean, he's seen off two competitors now for the number one shirt, with Baxter and Darlow moving on to other clubs. So potentially could see off a third, but look, we'll see what happens in that space as well. But look, we'll move on then. We'll talk our player of the week to review, which is Alfie Jones. I said last week to Logan that I thought Matt Ingram was just about the last player to survive from the last time we did these reviews, but actually there are a couple still around from that League One season. And Alfie Jones, I mean, he signed from Southampton at the time. It was a pretty nominal fee on a one-year deal with an option for a second year. But he's since signed essentially a 4-year deal over the most recent summer period. 96 appearances for the club already, a goal to his name as well. He seems to be one of those, like that summer when we went down to League One, we did a lot of very good business. You look at the players that we brought into the club that summer, considering the level we were playing at and considering the business that we'd done previously, and arguably the summer afterwards as well, when you consider who came into the club, we hit gold on a lot of those players.
Yeah, it's I guess like that's when you get to look back, hindsight, retrospect, whatever, however you want to. But yeah, it's nice to look back and say, what, actually that it is wild to think how long some of the players have been here. It doesn't feel like they've been here for that long.
Season,
yeah, like 96 appearances is a pretty solid amount. He'll become a centurion this season, and I think, he's been a good servant for the club. Really, I think he's had a few patches where he's had to sort of battle and fight for his place, and I think early on was that they didn't know which box to put him in. Was he a defensive midfielder? Was he a centre back? But I think he's really, especially last year, developed a really nice partnership with McLaughlin, and really showed that he's got the potential to be, a really solid centre back for us. And I think he's done a great job, and I'm glad that he's signed that, renegotiate a new deal, and I'm happy that he's there. I think I think you're right. We struck gold with a few of those players.
It's really fascinating as well because, listening to some of the previews coming into this season and how people thought we would do, and there's a lot of focus on our, midfield and attacking talent, but not a whole lot and also our wing backs, to be honest, but not a whole lot of focus on our centre backs. And you look at McLaughlin, you look at Jones, I think they really go under the radar a lot in the league in terms of their quality. And you think since Rosenia came in and we were the fourth or the fifth best defence in the league last season, you have to think, great credit to Rosie for getting us into shape, but also credit to the players and credit to Jones and McLaughlin for actually sort of manning that defence so adequately. And you think, some of the centre backs in the league that get a lot of praise, and Jones would just be, I reckon no one would be able to pick him out of a lineup. So I think he's massively underrated around the league, which is to our advantage because it means that no one's coming in trying to turn his head. But I think he deserves a whole lot more praise. Player of the season last year as well. It's a pretty decent feat.
Yeah, I think he's done really, really well. He's just done what a footballer has to do. He's worked hard. He's honed his craft. He's got better. And long may it continue.
Indeed. All right. Well, let's move on. We'll talk about the game coming up against Blackburn, still managed by Jean Dale Thomason, who's been in charge since the start of last season, which is, it doesn't sound like it should be much of an accomplishment, but these days in football, making it through an entire season is pretty impressive. We've only won one of our last 5 against Blackburn, actually, so they are a little bit of a bogey side for us. And I think actually the run stretches back more than that. I think it's 1 in 8 or 1 in 9 or something like that. But they've got 1 win, 1 draw from the season so far, so still undefeated. They beat West Brom on the opening day and then drew 2-2 with Rotherham, although they had to come from 2-0 down, and Rotherham going down to 10 men helped in that one as well. Lost... why have I blanked on his name over the summer? Brereton Diaz is who I'm thinking of. They lost Brereton Diaz over the summer, which was sort of one of their more potent attacking options. Sammy Schmodic has sort of stepped up as probably their most potent player in that attacking third. But, they're a side that I think a lot were tipping to struggle a bit this season just because their resources were not the best and they hadn't really adequately replaced the players they've lost. But a reasonably positive start to the season for them, and I think they're a pretty good opponent. Like, we've sort of had a bit of a mix of everything. Like, we've got Norwich as a parachute club, we've got Sheff Wednesday as a team coming up, and now we've got Blackburn as you'd say a pretty even keel to us.
Yeah, I think they sit. They finished in 6th or just outside last season.
Must have been just outside.
Yeah. So, but. They were there or thereabouts anyway. And I think that's, you're right. These are the teams that we want to be competing with, staying in touch with. Obviously it's, round 3, so it's not, the end of the world. But, I think it'll be a tough game. I think they certainly pushed us last season. But I think, really good result, obviously, that we're coming off the back of. So I reckon we'll go all right. I think it'll be. I think this is, sort of. We're so early in the season that sort of everything's, we're part of a big longer litmus test, really, just to see sort of where we're at. And I think a few more games will probably really tell where we're at. But I think, if we could get another win here, that'd be amazing, and really start to drift away or make a tiny little bit of space away from those teams at the bottom. But because I think there's 2 teams that haven't won a game yet, something. It's only a couple.
I think it's like,
or haven't
it might
picked
be a
up
few
any
more than that,
points. Sorry, picked up any points. I think there was, but yeah, because I think we're like 9th or something, on 3 points, but like the top, there's only two teams that have won
2
both
teams,
games or something.
yeah.
So it's pretty even. Obviously, it's super early in the season, so it's always probably even at this stage. But I think there's no reason we can't get the points. If I had to tip something, I'm probably actually going to tip a draw, and we'll round out our loss win draw. But changes. I mean, I haven't really seen what they're playing like, and I forgot how they played last year because I don't really care how Blackburn plays that much, except that, like, for the reasons of what I was talking about earlier, is if they're going to sit deep, then maybe it's worth, bringing Oscar in to start or something and just shifting that onus around a little bit in that attacking third. But if they're going to try and play and there's going to be space to exploit, then probably Delap to start. But otherwise, I think, like, I'd keep it as is. It's a week to recover, even if I'm not sure what happened with Vinagre, but if he's fit, probably just leave Greaves there. I think it worked. We played really well. That's it seemed like we had a pretty good balance across the team, and nobody really had a bad game. So I think you got to sort of reward that. And I guess even like Delap didn't have a bad game, but I think potentially on a tactical sense, you might switch him out if they're going to sit a bit deeper and we're going to be on the edge of their box a lot more than someone like Oscar to bully and push around and try and squeeze in the box and trip over something and knock the ball in the net or whatever it is he does.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. I think Oscar in for Delap's probably the main change that I would think to make. Lakilo, I think definitely deserves another start. I think he was pretty high energy and really quite positive. He's probably the only other one I could see maybe there being a change if Vaughan's fit and Rosenia wants to throw Vaughan back in, or as you say, I mean, if Vinagre is fit, whether you even put Vinagre in on the wing and you just say, don't worry about defending, just get up there and have Greaves in behind him. That's probably the only change I'd make, is Oscar. In terms of a result, I think I could see a 1-1 draw. I think it's the sort of game where I'd probably just take a point from and move on. But, as we were saying, you sort of want to capitalize on the great result against Sheff Wednesday. If we can make it 2 wins in a row, I think that just sort of starts to build a lot of positive momentum. We get a couple of signings in the door this week as well. Suddenly the whole mood shifts in the club. So yeah, look, if we could get like a 2-1 win or something like that, obviously you're always going to want to take a win. But I wouldn't be unhappy with a draw, I think, in this one. I think Blackburn showing themselves already this season to be a reasonably tough opponent for teams. Yeah,
I think it's the same thing we always sort of say. If you pick up points, you're heading in the right direction. So I think, I'd be content with a point. I'd be disappointed with a loss, and I'd be thrilled with a win. But I probably expect, I think sort of the same as you. I think like a 1-1 or something, a score draw is probably kind of where I see it heading.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay. Well, look, thanks for joining me for this one, Dan.
That's all right. Anytime.
And thanks everyone for listening in. Hopefully we'll be back next week to discuss another brilliant City win after this game against Blackburn. We'll be back the same time next week. And until then, come on, City.